Fantasy Football Show.
Hello everybody and welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around Fantasy Premier League. Monday morning equals People's Poll. How we doing?
I'm alright, mate. You?
Yeah, not bad, not bad.
You're not going to do My Name's Suj?
Nah, people know by now. And if
My
they don't,
Name's James.
Search Google for Planet FPL. How are we?
I'm alright, mate. Yourself?
Yeah.
I feel tired because he was kicking off all night. But
Oh dear, Friday night piss up doesn't help us, does it?
it don't help you. State of you.
Good drink up, wasn't it?
It was a great night.
I was right. Managed to get home just about. The trains weren't running from Finsbury Park though, annoyingly. So I had to get a cab from Finsbury Park. They wouldn't let us into the station. But there you go.
Bad times.
Annoying weekend. West Ham could have won, should have won, maybe. Well, could have won. I don't know about should have won because if you don't take your chances,
Spurs could have lost, should have lost.
yeah.
If you don't take your chances.
This
baby.
feels like it's becoming a reoccurring theme now. So let's see. Let's get into the People's Poll because it's a meaty one this morning and it's FPL focused, unlike some which have been a little bit more football focused. And it's all about those chunky chips, skinny fries, curly fries, whatever else.
Chunky chips. Yeah, I felt timing-wise, following what we did on Friday morning's pod, which boomed a little bit, that it was necessary to look into this a little bit more. So there were 4 options, all chip-related. First of which was what would be the ideal Gameweek 31 free hit team. We won't be doing that now. I think it's probably something we will cross over between now and Friday deadline next week. Game weeks 32 to 33 and 35 to 36. And the reason I mention them is because I think they're just being a little bit overlooked at the moment. And I think for those like us, or certainly like myself, planning into game week 31, it's very easy to forget what's beyond. And I'm in a state now where I'm likely to make a transfer now, this week, which is taking me towards 31, that would enable my 32 transfer, for example. But that didn't get voted in.
That's the one I voted for.
Yeah.
Annoyingly, but anyway, there we go.
Predicting the double game weeks, so based on our thoughts on who would win the FA Cup quarterfinals and how would it land.
Yeah.
And part of that's going to come out a little bit here anyway. The winner of the poll was, following my not groundbreaking announcement because it had been covered before, that there could be no doubles in game week 34. What is the best case scenario for game week 34 for those that intend to free hit or bench boost? I mean, bench boost for me has to be 37, but what's the best possible outcome in terms of the number of teams that can double?
And you've done the calculations, you put it all into the computer. Computer says no.
I didn't use a computer. I used old school paper and pen. I think the most we can get to is 4
doubles.
I've worked out.
And just for clarity, because I asked you the same question when I asked you this beforehand, 4 teams,
Yes.
2 matches, not 4 matches.
No, that's
8
no. It's
teams.
4 doubles over 4 matches, or 3 matches.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily that you'll have 2 fixtures and all 4 of those teams will double. It's
Right.
4 teams.
Right. Okay. Which will
That's-
have 2 fixtures.
In my opinion, that's the very most that we could get to in game week 34. We're probably not likely to get to that many. But I think other scenarios lead to anything between 0, 1, 2, and 3, basically. To get to 0, we need to sort of take a step back just to kind of cover off what we covered last week. So one of the things I did look at was ordinarily get 2 double game weeks in a season. One sort of around about 34, the other normally 37.
And then you might get the odd sprinkling of 1 extra match in a week.
So I looked back over the last 4 seasons to see the number of fixtures that had been split between first double and second double, which were last season was 4 in each. The season before was 4 in the first one, 6 in the second. 16-17 was 5 in each. 15-16 was 5 in the first one and 4 in the second.
Right.
So that's good news for those fearing the idea of 0, because I think if there's 5, there can't be 0, basically.
Yeah.
And at the moment, we're looking in a position where to split it equally, we probably are looking at 5 fixtures in each. Now, it doesn't mean that it necessarily will be split that way. For example, if it is 4 and 6, we could end up in the scenario of 0 teams doubling in game week 34.
Explain that, just so people understand. If the split was 4 and 6,
yeah,
they wanted to put 4 extra games into game week 34.
So, for example, if
6 into 37.
If there's 4 games postponed in game week 34, and those are the only ones that get put into the midweek of 34, we ain't gonna have any teams that double.
No,
it's fairly as simple as that.
That's the worst case potential scenario.
One of the ways around it is you might think less postponements is bad. It's not necessarily. Because if you only get 3 postponements, there's only 3 games in that midweek. I think the chances then is that they're going to shove 1 or 2 in there additionally. And obviously, the less teams that factually have to go into 34, the easier it is to bring others in from elsewhere.
Yeah, true. Because there is a couple of lingering fixtures still kicking around at the moment. Sheffield United Villa, there's still to be played.
Sheffield United Villa is lingering about, and I'll come on to that in a sec. There are currently 10 teams that can double in game week 34. Although, because of what we highlighted on Friday's pod about the scheduling of Brighton's game week 34 Monday and game week 35 Saturday fixtures, we think Leicester and Brighton has to go into game week 37, which realistically leaves us 8 teams that can double. They are Arsenal, Aston Villa, Chelsea, Everton, Manchester United, Norwich, Sheffield United and Southampton. Those are the only teams by permutations essentially that we can be looking at for a potential game week 34 free hit.
Could all 8 double?
No.
Because obviously FA Cup means that
chance.
Some of those guys are playing each other in the FA Cup, right? So
if we can get to more than 4 teams that can double in game week 34, I've missed it.
Okay.
I don't see how it can happen. There's certain things that are already in place. For example, we know Newcastle and Man City will be postponed in 34.
It's already been taken out of the schedule. It's not on.
They've drawn them each other in the FA Cup quarterfinal, so one of them has to make the semi-final.
Correct.
We know that it only needs one of Arsenal or Leicester to make the semi-final for that game week 34 fixture to be off. But essentially, we can kind of just forget Man City and Newcastle for the moment because we know that's off.
Yep.
So it's just the permutations of the other 3 quarterfinal fixtures.
Man City Newcastle could still go into the midweek thereafter.
Yes, and therefore it just stays as a single game week fixture. We think because of obviously Leicester and Brighton, if Arsenal and Leicester's postponed, 98% it's going to stay in game week 34 as well. So suddenly already you're looking at 4 teams. But if those 2 go in there, I don't think it's necessarily the worst thing because then you can start working in other fixtures.
Yeah.
Basically, the Doomsday scenario starts potentially from as early as this Thursday, which is United and Wolves staying in Europa League won't help. And the reason it won't help is because if Sheffield United make the FA Cup semi-finals, they have 3 games to reschedule. Manchester United, Wolves and the Aston Villa fixture from game week 28. Now, if United...
When is the Manchester United fixture due? Sorry, the Manchester United fixture was...
So Sheffield United's fixture with Manchester United at Old Trafford was 31. Sheffield United due to play Wolves in game week 34. Now, if Sheffield United...
That could still happen.
Yes, if Sheffield United beat beat Arsenal in the FA Cup, then obviously that fixture goes as well.
But if Arsenal win, that's back and they've only got 2
Sheffield United then have 3 fixtures to rearrange and only 2 available midweeks. Now, if Man United and Wolves continue to progress in Europe, those 2 fixtures obviously have to therefore stay in 34-37. It couldn't go anywhere else.
Yep.
So the Aston Villa Sheffield United fixture would have to remain in an odd game week, 32, 33, 35 or 36.
Yeah, neither of those 2 are in Europe, so it doesn't really matter. Like they'll play on a European night, no problem.
Meaning, therefore, Aston Villa Sheffield United is still, if necessary, likely to take place in a odd game week to create I guess it would be a 5th double game week, wouldn't it? If you factor in Liverpool and Man City and Arsenal this week.
Yep.
There is one other fixture and a circumstance where I think Newcastle and Aston Villa could become that fixture instead. Just to cover off where I think that will happen, I think game week 32 is unlikely because we're only likely to get the scheduling of these rearranged fixtures towards the end of the international break, i.e. not long before game week 32. The last time this scenario happened, it was very late. We got it on like the Thursday or the Friday before the 32 fixtures. So I think 32 is too late. 33 is a possible, but I think similarly, it's more likely to go into one of the others. Now, game week 35, I think currently is unlikely. It's possible. The reason for that being that the game could only be played on a Thursday, and that's because Aston Villa and Crystal Palace has been scheduled for the Monday night football from game week 35. So it would have to be the Thursday. Obviously, look, they could schedule Sheffield United and Villa on the Sunday or so in 36. They can do that. But it leads me to think that game week 36 is the most likely. Now, this is actually potentially quite a big positive for those who are like me thinking, yep, free hit 34, wildcard 36, bench boost 37. You can wildcard in 6 from Villa and Sheffield United, can't you?
Yeah.
You have them in 36, and if this scenario pans out, they're going to play for you in 37 as well. So something strongly to consider with that.
I mean, 3 from Sheffield United, yeah, no problem. You can go quite defensive there. Henderson, Baldock, Egan, whatever you want. But 3 from Villa,
we'd go
Grealish is a given.
Probably
Samatta.
At this stage, you probably would go something like Mings, Grealish, Samatta.
Yeah.
Mings is a lock. And that's what you
I
kind
mean,
of
McGinn
want
could
at
be
that
fit
stage.
by then as well.
Possibly.
So McGinn, Grealish, Samatta is a fair shout.
Yeah, if you want to take a gamble on like an El Ghazi or something.
Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't get me that excited.
The goalkeeper.
But Pepe's been all right.
The goalkeeper's a fullback option. If you was to want to get blanket defensively of Villa Sheffield United,
yeah, you take
in
Dean
that
Henderson,
case,
though. There's no price
you
difference
would. But
between
in terms of locked players, the Sheffield United defensive setup, as long as they're fit, they're going to play, aren't they?
Yeah.
That back five's not changing,
No.
mate. I know Ben Osborne's done all right in a couple of appearances for the Blades recently, but that back five, if they're fit, they're playing. So from a double game week perspective, they're ideal, mate. And obviously, if Sheffield United's in 37 against Manchester United, Dean Henderson can't play.
Right.
Remember that, right?
Makes sense, yeah.
The other thing to note off a little bit what I touched on last week was the Thursday the 23rd problem, the Thursday issue in game week 34, where I believe there's only 2 fixtures that can be played on that date. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be a game played on that date, but I think ideally it's what they'd want to do. Villa and Sheffield United is one of those 2 fixtures, which could be played that night. The other is Crystal Palace and Chelsea, which, should Chelsea beat Leicester, is quite likely then to also stay in game week 34. However, I've got to a scenario where I think there won't be a Thursday fixture. The Doomsday scenario of no doubles basically can only happen if Manchester United and Sheffield United both win in the FA Cup. Okay. Now, it doesn't mean that it will happen, but that's the one that really gives us the biggest problems if those guys both win. What I think is the best case scenario from an FA Cup perspective leading to the most doubles is, and this might surprise people, is actually Arsenal and Leicester both winning and Norwich beating Manchester United. That's the best case scenario, I think, to try and level out the most doubles in 34.
And what do you think that means in terms of which fixtures will double in 34 should that happen as a best case scenario?
So what I've worked out as a possibility should, and it doesn't matter who wins between Man City and Newcastle, that would mean only 3 postponements, therefore, then in game week 34, Newcastle v Man City, Arsenal v Leicester, and Norwich away to Watford. I think in that scenario, we're looking at a dead split of 5 doubles in game weeks 34 and 37, which would mean Villa and Sheffield United staying in game week 36.
Yeah.
Would go into 37, so there wouldn't be that extra double. So I think Arsenal, Leicester, Norwich win the cup. We could be looking at game week 34, Arsenal versus Leicester. No doubles from those 2 teams. Chelsea versus Manchester City, a double for Chelsea. Manchester United versus Sheffield United, a double for Sheffield United. Newcastle versus Aston Villa, a double for Aston Villa. And Norwich versus Everton, which would be a double for Everton. That could very easily be Watford against Norwich in place, which would be a double for Watford. I just suspect that if you were to end up with the position of Norwich having 2 doubles, from a television perspective, it's probably more in their interest to hold Norwich and Watford to later. because it could matter.
Could be a relegation.
It could. Whereas
6.0, we don't know about that yet.
Norwich could be down and Everton could be in mid-table.
Yeah.
And therefore that fixture doesn't matter. That's probably, of the available fixtures, Norwich and Everton's probably one they're not so keen to be throwing on the telly. So just think that's my theory on that. And I think that's probably why Ben Crellin had suggested previously that he thinks that Everton was probably the most likely team to have a double, because that fixture can go into either double game week now, and I think it's probably slightly more likely to go into game week 34 than 37. That would leave us with 37 doubles of Villa, Sheffield United, Leicester, Brighton, Newcastle, Man City, Southampton, Arsenal, Watford, Norwich. All 10 of those teams. Obviously, anybody who's got a midweek fixture in 37 will double.
Yep.
I still think there is a slight possibility that there can be a treble in 37. When I say slight, I mean less chance of a 37 treble than a 34 blank, basically.
Yeah.
Just purely going off, a couple of years ago, Chelsea had a double in 37, which consisted of playing Friday and Monday. So they played West Brom away on the Friday and they played Watford at home on the Monday. Now, to make that happen, and so then Sky had midweek fixtures Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. To make that happen, Everton and Watford moved back to the Friday night in game week 37. Wasn't shown on the telly, and Watford fans weren't happy about it. But obviously that then, the Monday to then Sunday of 38, you could have a third fixture on the Thursday.
Right.
I don't see any reason with what we've got now why we could end up in that position. But I guess it is still a possibility for a Sheffield United or an Aston Villa that could still potentially happen.
Mm-hmm.
I guess in theory, somebody could have no double in 34 and the 37 treble. I just don't see why that would happen, basically.
So the four teams that let's assume Everton are the ones that are going to double in 34.
Yeah.
I guess now that we're that late into the season in terms of our chips, you're going to use one of them in 34 if you haven't already, if you've got a free hit or what have you. Are they that attractive in terms of both of the doubles? So Everton's fixtures are...
Everton's 34 double would look all right. Southampton at home and Norwich away.
That's pretty decent. So you'd be happy with three of those.
I think in that case, you go with three, certainly. You'd probably start with Richarlison, Calvert-Lewin and something else somewhere.
Sidibe
probably
or
defensively, yeah. You probably wouldn't. It's probably
Holgate.
One where Holgate probably. It's probably the most locked defensively. You go, yeah, fine. That's all right. The problem is, I think, from a lot of these potential 34 doublers, you might be looking defensively from a safety net of will they play twice. But that's often the case.
Yep. You got Sheffield United.
Well, Sheffield United would then be Wolves and Manchester United together. Wolves at home, Manchester United away. But I think you'd still take you take three of them.
Yeah, they wouldn't concede a lot in those two games. You could see them being quite up for it. So you'd still take three Sheffield United. Agreed. I mean, the likes of Lundstrom, Flair, they're so cheap anyway. So
Aston Villa would be Manchester United at home and Newcastle away.
Less tempting. But Samatta, I would take.
Newcastle are safe now as well, aren't they?
Yeah, it'd be attacking options I'd take from them, not any defensive. And Grealish and Samatta are both okay, in my opinion.
And Chelsea would be at Crystal Palace away and Manchester City at home.
Not easy fixtures.
We watched the Manchester derby yesterday. Are City going to give a shit?
Probably not, but Palace away is tough. They don't concede a lot of goals. We talked about it before. I mean, it's not
Also
always played
safe.
out, but yeah. Look, still you'd take three from Chelsea. 3 Chelsea, 3 Everton, 3 Sheffield United, and a couple of Villa, and you're off, and off you go. That's what you do when you free hit, is normally steam into a handful of teams, right? A lot of us are going to have very if that is the case, a lot of people will have very, very similar free hit teams.
Yes and no. So let's say we've got those 8 teams. In theory, then you can pick a whole team of teams doubling twice. You can pick 12 players. If you want to go down that route, I'd probably recommend that maybe you'd have 4 defensive, or maybe even 5 from those teams, depending on your setup. You probably want your first sub to be defensive, though, just to give you a little bit, I don't know,
safety,
unlikely injury or something. But if those are the fixtures, do we really want to go for 12 of them?
Well, and miss out on who? So who are Liverpool got that?
Well, Liverpool away to Brighton on the Monday night.
Yeah, they're going to batter them probably.
Arsenal, Leicester would obviously, in that case, remain a single fixture.
Not so tempting.
West Ham at home to Burnley. Spurs away to Bournemouth. I think what you do is...
Yeah, I'd go in on Bournemouth, steaming on Bournemouth.
I wouldn't blame you, sir.
Oh, mate.
I think realistically, though, what you do in that case is you're looking at the fixtures at game week and what could go off. You're probably looking at you wanting at least 9 of the doubles.
Yeah,
I think 9 of the doubles and 2 Liverpool players is probably the sort of balance you're thinking about, I think.
Yep, sounds about right.
Nothing from the other single game week fixtures would overly appeal to make me think that's better than any Joe Bloggs having 2 games. Looking at them. Would you be tempted by Aubameyang at home to Leicester?
I'm not tempted by Aubameyang at all at the moment. I know he's a stone cold killer, I always call him. He's deadly in front of goal and he's so consistent. But he's just not tempting at the moment. I don't like the formation that Arsenal play where he's off on the left. Just doesn't do it for me.
It's good that's the Gameweek 32 transfer I've got my eye on.
Get him in.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at Bruno Fernandes in Gameweek 32 straight away.
Yep.
And I'm thinking Kevin De Bruyne.
Could be both for me.
Kevin De Bruyne could be a goner. I did.
That's the sacrifice to get Aubameyang for me. Yeah.
I did play around with my Game Week 32 moves, and it was Bruno Fernandes for Kevin De Bruyne, Antonio for Traore, and then it gives me enough money to turn Jamie Vardy into Aubameyang. But the only reason I had Aubameyang in that kind of draft, let's say, is because I had 11.1 in the bank, and he was the only striker that's premium in and around that. But it wasn't for any other reason. But they do have good fixtures all the way up to the last day of the season.
Arsenal do have a good run in, yeah.
As do Man United. So I know Andy at Let's Talk FPL was looking forward to Game Week 32 because he can get 3 Man United players in. And it's rare for a Man United fan to want to get 3 Man United players in. But I don't blame him. I wouldn't go to 3, but 2. And even the Martial Fernandes double up is no different to a Mane Salah potential double up in terms of viability, I think. So anyway, we digress on wildcards, but
yeah, if obviously we have the situation of Manchester United and Sheffield United win, let me give you a sort of example of what can happen. So let's say that we put Chelsea in there instead of Leicester now, as well as the 3 other victors in the cup quarterfinal with, let's say, Man City. If Chelsea, Man United and Sheffield United are the 3 teams that win the cup quarterfinals, there are only 3 teams that can physically double by my workings out. They are Everton again, Norwich, and Arsenal. Those are the only 3 teams. Because Arsenal and Leicester would then stay on the Saturday, it opens up the prospect for Southampton and Arsenal to be played in that midweek. And I think in that scenario, that would happen, actually. I think it's another one where TV probably not so fussed, unless if Arsenal can win back-to-back games... well, they can't. They've only got 1 game now, haven't they? Oh, no, sorry. Man City away, obviously. Man City. If they win at Man City away and Brighton away, they're really in the top 4 hunt. And it might be that they look at it a little bit differently. But at the moment, Southampton Arsenal's another one. They'd probably go, yeah, we picked it originally, but we can leave that. It's not necessarily true, by the way, that the games that have already been picked for TV will definitely stay on TV. That's not the case. They have changed that before. I remember watching Spurs at Palace, and it wasn't originally a TV pick, and they dropped Arsenal Leicester the year we were pushing Chelsea, which caused a lot of bantering at the time, by the way. But yeah, so Chelsea, Man United, Sheffield United winning, there's only 3 teams could possibly double. Now, Norwich and Everton would be there because Norwich wouldn't have a second double. Norwich and Everton going in that game week, which I think it probably could. And then obviously, as I said, Arsenal away to Southampton.
I mean, that's not... you could take 3 Arsenal and 3 Everton and a couple of Norwich.
I actually think in that case that you probably would get those 3 teams. So I don't think it's...
What do you mean by you get players from?
No, I mean, I think those... In that case of, say, Chelsea, Man United, Sheffield United, I think those 3 teams I mentioned probably would all double.
Yeah. And then you can take 3 Arsenal, 3 Everton and 2 from Norwich, and that gives you 8. That's enough. That's 16 games instead of 8 games. That's pretty decent going.
Obviously, the other single game week fixture we haven't mentioned is Man City away to Newcastle, if that was to stay in that game week. Rather than Chelsea, Man City.
Question mark at the moment.
There's a lot of coupling of teams, so it doesn't necessarily mean that if game week 31 fixtures go into 34, that automatically creates doubles, for example. So Chelsea v Man City could go into 34 as a double, and if Chelsea have gone through in the cup, there's no double. Manchester United and Sheffield United, it's the same thing. If both have gone through in the cup, it's still just a single game week for both. And also Newcastle and Aston Villa can also create that if in the case that Manchester United were to win and Villa's game would be off. So there are fixtures on 31 that can go into 34 and it still won't create doubles.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for us to be in the Doomsday scenario of no doubles, then it just needs the 34 fixtures to stay in the 34. I think if we're in that situation and there's 34 teams, all the 34 postponements stay in 34, so there's 8 teams, I think we'd still end up with one team doubling, is my instinct.
Doesn't feel right using a free hit to cover that off.
Because I think it would cover off, depending on what went out, the extra fixture would be Norwich and Everton or Southampton and Arsenal. Probably based on the permutations of only needing one of Arsenal or Leicester to go off. It probably means Norwich and Everton going there. And obviously if Manchester United win, then it means we'd get doubles for Norwich and Everton. And that's why there's permutations here of having 0, 1, 2, 3 or 4 teams doubling.
Yeah. This is so from what you're saying, I think anybody that has, say, right here, right now, less than 5 or 6 players for game week 31, for that blank, maybe even consider your free hit, because we don't know what we're going to get in 34. If you're already up to 7 or 8 in game week 31, maybe not. You now have to kind of play your own game in terms of figuring out, do you want to maneuver and manipulate your team for 31? What impact does it have 32 to 35? Or do you want to sod it, work just as play as normal as you would, and then free hit in 31? The thing is, for me, I've got take Arsenal, Everton, Norwich as a worst case scenario, or Arsenal, Chelsea, Everton, any of those teams that we've mentioned. I don't have any Everton players. I don't have any Norwich players. I don't have Sheffield United. I have 1. So really, and Norwich I have 1, Todd Cantwell. For me to get even close to having 7 or 8 double game week players in 34 from now is impossible. Whereas for me, I've already got 7 or 8. I've got 7 at the moment, and I'll get to 9 for game week 31. That's cool. And 3 are Liverpool, happy to hold. 3 are Wolves, happy to hold. Do you know what I mean? So I just feel like for where I am, it makes much, much more logical sense to go with the free hit for 34. And I think for the majority of people, it probably will.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. I think there's a lot of people who have perhaps taken hits maybe to get City Arsenal this game week. Might be in a good position for 31 and still might think, do you know what? I'm better on the other side, particularly say with them Arsenal fixtures. I'm better off on the other side still going to a free hit in 31 rather than 34. Because obviously Arsenal's one of them that could double in 34 as well. The key with Arsenal is basically if Arsenal-Leicester gets moved from that weekend, Arsenal will double in 37, not 34, because of this Brighton issue, unless they change the Brighton schedule and move, say, Brighton and Man City back to the Sunday. I don't think that will happen. It's incredibly unlikely to happen, obviously, if Man City are still in the Champions League as well.
Yeah.
Bearing in mind at that stage, we will be semi-final stage, but the quarterfinals will only end 2 weeks before that in the midweek. That's very late notice to then say to City fans who will have paid for trains, etc. Oh yeah, by the way, you're now the Sunday because you're out of Europe. I don't see that happening.
No, it would be a bit.
And the fix is just to put Leicester and Brighton in game week 37. In which case, anyway, this is all going to be announced basically just before game week 32, I would say, and then we'll know where we stand.
Oof.
it's complicated. Don't worry about it too much. But
I suppose the takeaway is, because I reckon this year compared to last year, I've paid less attention to this because of the reason being that we don't know. So I'm not one of those people that likes to spend time worrying about things that I don't know about.
Same.
Albeit the planning does help. Just to have a loose idea, it helps me because you're here. So, and it's not even a joke. It's like, okay, well, James got a reasonable handle on it. If he reckons that 31, 34, 37 is going to play out this way, I will maneuver my ship in that direction slowly and steadily and see what happens.
I think the most likely for 34 is that we'll have 3 teams double. I think that's the most likely. That's probably something I should have said on Friday, maybe, but I hadn't looked into it enough detail. I'd only looked at what the worst case scenario was.
There we go.
It's a case of, do you then want to be in a position where, I don't know, if it is Arsenal, Everton, Norwich, for example, that you want, how badly do you want to steam into that? I think there's every reason to go, yeah, okay. I mean, Pukki hasn't scored in the league since, mid-December or something. But I think for a double on pens, you probably still would go, yeah, Pukki can't forget him defensively.
I'd probably
bang in Richarlison,
Calvert-Lewin.
Aubameyang's an obvious. Perhaps Leno in goal.
Saka.
Couple of Liverpool, Saka, whatever. And
if you need the money to save the money, really. Saka.
And then you're there. There's a case even potentially that Gameweek 34 could look like just generally quite ugly. It might be the sort of week you want a free hit in. I think unless you're in a position where 31 is bad, get yourself your coverage of the Liverpool and Wolves guys you want, and then third in is probably Burnley, just over Watford. And you're gonna shield off a lot of others. 34 will be aggressive, because whether right or wrong in terms of steaming into the 3 or 4 teams that I've mentioned, a lot of other people won't be able to. It will be an aggressive move, and you might not have too much trust in it, but it could pay off, right? And I think there is always the fallback of what we'd mentioned last week of, is Gameweek 38 for a free hit? Is that the worst thing? I think as a fallback option, it's fine. I wouldn't plan that way, but I think it's a fallback option. In the same way, triple captaincy, there's going to be some people who haven't used their triple captaincy and are probably waiting to hear that, what's the potential doubles in 34? I mean, Leicester at home, Southampton away is not too bad for Aubameyang. I'd argue it's possibly even slightly better than this week.
Yep.
Bearing in mind, they'll obviously be out of Europe, so rotation shouldn't be an issue for him. Would you fancy a Calvert-Lewin or Richarlison? Southampton at home, Norwich away?
Yeah, it's a decent shout.
It's an alternative. Personally, my reflection on triple captaincy would be whether you got the result with Salah or were unlucky with Mane, that Liverpool was the best option. When the majority of people have done it. Bench boost should be 37. I think if you're sitting there with everything left, it's very dependent on what you've got left, but you should definitely be thinking 37 bench boost. And I would advise against the wild card of 32, 33. For those still got it, I would hold. I would hold it till 35 or 36. And I'm hoping, Villa Sheffield United goes into the 36, and we got six potential fixtures from Villa Sheffield United.
And then 37, that would be tidy.
And then you still go 9 players from the other available teams if you're bench boosting in 37, right?
Exactly, yeah.
That works.
So there you go. Some really, really interesting options that have just been highlighted by James coming up at you now. So have a listen again, get your pen and paper ready and jot down any notes you have. But I guess the ultimate is figure out right here, right now, you've got a very simple choice to make. If you are in the position that so many are with that free hit still up your sleeve, are you gonna work your team to get 8-9 players out for 31 and leave it for 34? If that's too much of a stretch and you don't fancy taking the hits, because obviously that can cost you points as well, and then you still have to worry about this game week 30 and 32 and 33 either side. Whack it in 31 and work towards 34 by which we'll know by the end of game week 31/32. What else do we have coming at people this week, James?
Main podcast, we'll talk a bit of football tonight. Tottenham tomorrow. Should be fun, the usual. You were bloody unlucky Saturday, as we said. And my team were the complete opposite.
I said we were unlucky. We played well, but to take your chances is what I say. But anyway,
I think Mourinho was dead at half-time and he saved himself. That's what I will say as a spoiler.
The thing is, with Mourinho,
And then
I can't say what I want to say about him.
And then undid it again after the game.
Yeah. I want to talk about him, but I can't say what I want to say.
Wednesday will be Sky, and there's decisions to make for Manchester City ownership. I think if you were like me and didn't plough in yesterday, having advised originally that I would, and shat myself when it seemed to become apparent Sunday lunchtime that Kevin De Bruyne wasn't going to make it, I bottled a lot of it. But we'll have information Wednesday.
Aguero and Otamendi.
I bought Otamendi.
Yeah, and I already had Mahrez.
He hit the passing. He was so nailed. He was the most nailed on, other than obviously Ederson.
I bought Bruno Fernandes as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good going.
I think my game week rank for Sky at the moment is like 4,000. It's pretty decent this week.
Thursday's clash of the correspondence is with two people who may well have doubles in 34. It's Norwich, Sheffield United, FPL_Badger, FPL_Gaffer.
Southampton.
Norwich and Southampton. Southampton could have obviously Everton away and Arsenal at home in 34. Norwich could have Watford away and Everton at home in theory. And that's not bad if it turns out that way.
I can imagine Tomo, when you said Sheffield United there, thinking, what? This week? You said Sheffield United a second ago.
Did I?
Yeah. And that's what I was thinking.
Red and white stripes, all shites.
Yeah. He'll be on a plane over to join us.
Friday's final plan will preview Game Week 30.
Correct. Thank you for tuning in this Monday morning. Hope your brains haven't been fried too much by all this double blank talk. We'll be back at you with a full suite of content, fast and furious. Do hit like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, all that other stuff. And do jump in the comments if you've got anything to add on these blanks and doubles that we might have missed. Ciao for now.
Cue music, man child.
The Fantasy Football Show.